Let's say you're Hugo Chavez, the authoritarian ruler of Venezuela. You've wrecked your economy, you've wrecked your country. The only way you've been able to stay in power is because of the grace of God, or the devil, that you're sitting on the world's second largest oil reserves. And even though you constantly threaten and abuse the United States, well, they still buy 800,000 barrels of oil from you every day, or about $30 billion worth a year. Things are looking pretty good, and in fact, every time you misbehave and threaten world stability, guess what? The price of oil jumps and you make even more money. That's the game played by all the OPEC dictators. But now Canada is threatening to break the cartel. Our oil sands oil is now the largest source of U.S. imports. And if things continue on plan, we'll triple our oil sands production over the next 20 years. That's a major threat to OPEC countries like Venezuela. Hugo Chavez and the King of Saudi Arabia and the Ayatollahs of Iran have lost sleep over the prospect that Canada might break into their game. Lucky for them, President Barack Obama delayed approving a major oil sands pipeline from Canada to the U.S. called the Keystone XL. That bought at least another year for Venezuelan imports to the United States. But now Canada is proposing our own pipeline to our own west coast from the oil sands in Alberta to the town of Kitimat, BC. Without Obama there to run interference, how could Chavez stop us? I mean, he can't invade us, he can't bribe us, even the UN can't touch us now that we're leaving the Kyoto Protocol. So what can Chavez do? Well, he still has an ace up his sleeve. He's got an ally right here in Canada. Her name is Sheila Leggett. And she's a bureaucrat, and she's in charge of the federal government's regulatory approval of the proposed Northern Gateway pipeline. Leggett has been reviewing the Northern Gateway project for 2 years already. Public hearings are set to start next month. But last week, Leggett announced she was going to add on an additional year for discussions, just like that. This little environmental empress decided that thousands of jobs and billions of dollars will have to wait for her. She's happy to explain why, by the way. Here's a video of Leggett explaining what she thinks her top priority is. Not to make a decision, not to weigh Canada's national interest, but to provide an Oprah Winfrey show where everyone in the world can get 10 minutes of her time to have a little heart-to-heart. Look at this.
Our job is to make sure that everyone who wants to talk to us about this project has an opportunity to be heard. We'll take whatever time it takes to ensure that everybody's views are heard, and we will make sure that they're considered as we reach our decision.
We'll take whatever time it takes. Scroll ahead. I mean, she'll take whatever time it takes. Foreign lobby groups like Greenpeace saw that bizarre video and responded with gusto. Over 4,500 people have gone to the website, which you can see on the screen, and typed their names into Leggett's website, signing up for the right to make a presentation to her. She said it. She'll take whatever time it takes. So her website allows anyone in the world, literally any person, any child, any foreign citizen, to simply type their name and address and get the right to testify before her panel. It's as trivial as clicking like on a Facebook page. That's why Leggett needs another year. I mean, if 40,000 people click on her website, will she delay things 10 years? Skimming through the names on the petition is like reading those goofy petitions where wiseacres sign up as IP Freeling. I'm not joking, but Leggett promises that every single person who clicks on her website will get at least 10 full minutes of her time. That's why she had to delay things already. She has so many internet friends, like Captain Jack Sparrow. Seriously, Captain Jack Sparrow, a fictitious pirate played by Johnny Depp, signed Leggett's website, so she delayed her approval 10 minutes for him. And then there's John Stevenson, who signed up twice. One says John Stevenson, one says J. Stevenson, and then someone using his same email address signed up as Evelyn Stevenson. So the three of them have blocked off more than half an hour of Leggett's time. But it's not just duplicates or impersonations. Foreign citizens have signed up too. And Sheila Leggett promises every single one of them will get 10 minutes from her. Here's someone from Uruguay in South America who has signed up to testify. Here's someone from Italy. And here's someone from Austria. Folks, I'm literally reading through the 4,500 names that are posted on Leggett's Government of Canada website as people and pirates register to testify before her review panel. Here's someone from Shreveport, Louisiana. And here's someone from Pennsylvania. And here's someone from beautiful Montana. Folks, if you're not sure, those are United States states. They're U.S. citizens who will now have the right to appear before a Canadian bureaucrat to speak against our right to build a pipeline on our own land. And Leggett will give each one of them 10 minutes. Here's one from Colorado. Here's one from the lovely Los Angeles suburb of Encino. Right there, you've got a day's worth of hearings because these government bureaucrats get started at the crack of 10 and they have their lunch and coffee breaks, and between each 10-minute speaker is a couple of minutes for the next speaker to sit down and get settled. So the foreigners I've just listed, and the pirate, and someone putting their contact info down 3 times, have just delayed by a day or two our entire national interest. And there are 4,500 of these names, and more being added on every day. Oh, remember Hugo Chavez? Well, he, not himself personally, but Chavez's company called Citgo wrote a letter demanding that the Northern Gateway pipeline not be built because it would hurt Citgo's profits. Seriously, look at the letter. They're one of the folks that Sheila Leggett will allow to lie down on her psychotherapist couch for 10 minutes to vent their hatred for Canada and our pipeline. And Leggett thinks that's her job, to listen to each one. Listen to her nutty little clip again. Roll it.
Our job is to make sure that everyone who wants to talk to us about this project has an opportunity to be heard. We'll take whatever time it takes to ensure that everybody's views are heard, and we will make sure that they're considered as we reach our decision.
It's not all foreigners, of course, but I got a chuckle out of how many folks from Eastern Canada are passionate about a pipeline in northern BC they'll never see. Here's a fellow in Montreal where they import their oil from OPEC regimes like Saudi Arabia and Russia. So tanker ships bringing in conflict oil to him is fine, but tanker ships exporting ethical oil out is evil. Got it. Oh, here's one of my favorites. A guy named Adam Awad from Ottawa thought he'd sign up to testify. Who's he? Well, here's how he described himself to a reporter a couple of years ago. Quote, "When I was around 13 or so," he said, "I started exploring spirituality. The first transition was to a sort of Wicca, witchcraft, pagan spirituality. At first, my parents were frightened. I'm the youngest of 4 children, and the worst thing they ever had to deal with before this was my brother acting out in class. Then here's me coming out as a gay witch." He says he's a Buddhist Sikh who was raised as a Roman Catholic. He says he wants to work as a dancer or acrobat in the Cirque du Soleil and then become a diplomat. So we're going to stall this whole pipeline for this fella to have a little theatricality on the public dime. Look, some petitioners don't even use their last names, like Bob M. So what? If Sheila Leggett is time for an acrobatic, gay, Wiccan, diplomat, Buddhist Sikh, she can bloody well make time for Bob M. Look, I'm not going to go through all of these 4,500 names. That's the point. But Sheila Leggett is every one of these nuts. And not just the nuts, the repetition. Leggett's website allows people to write a comment, but many of them are word-for-word replicas of each other. It's a form letter campaign arranged by professional environmental lobbyists, and it's working. The only question is whether Leggett is naive, incompetent, or biased against the pipeline. Some of the forms have been faxed in. They helpfully have the fax signature stamp at the top of the page showing which foreign-funded lobby group is working to gin up names, like the Sierra Club, which received a $909,000 grant from the U.S. Tides Foundation and their Canadian affiliate to gin up opposition to the tar sands. Those foreign billionaires are getting their money's worth. They've managed to delay the hearings by a year before they've even started. Last month, when Barack Obama delayed the Keystone XL pipeline from the oil sands to the U.S., Stephen Harper was appalled. But Leggett was appointed by Harper. And she just pulled an Obama on our own country. She's doing exactly what Hugo Chavez wants her to do, what American lobby groups want her to do. The one thing she's not doing is pursuing our Canadian national interest. She wants to run some big group therapy session. But it's not just Leggett who listens to foreigners over our Canadian interests. Canada is run over by professional anti-oil sands lobbyists who take money and orders from foreigners, even from foreign governments. Take the NGO called the Pembina Institute. It's quoted all the time in the media as a credible source of information. They've even appeared on the Sun News Network TV channel. Pembina is the name of a river in Alberta, but they take their orders not from Alberta, but from foreign countries like the High Commission of the United Kingdom. That's the UK Embassy in Canada. Pembina went to them for money to disparage the oil sands. They took foreign money to trash talk Canada. Here's the proof. Here's an access to information file from the UK government. Look at this. The first part, it was them, Pembina, who approached the British High Commission with a proposal. Look at that. The UK government didn't contact Pembina. The UK would never do something so audacious, so sabotaging of Canada. The Pembina Institute actually went to the UK government and asked for money to attack the oil sands. But it gets worse. The Pembina Institute, a so-called think tank with so-called credibility, actually agreed to show an early draft of their report to their foreign funders, a foreign government, and talk about it with them. They would never do that with, say, an oil sands company. They would never do that with the Canadian government. Of course not. Because they're not on our side. They took foreign money from a foreign government, and so they agreed to let a foreign government in on their report before it was actually published. They gave foreigners the inside track on what they were going to trash talk us about, which was, surprise, a carbon tax called cap and trade. Look at this. For $60,000 from the UK, a foreign competitor, a Canadian think tank will recommend that Canada increase our energy taxes. But that's not the worst of it. We don't know the worst of it because the British government is too embarrassed to tell us the worst of it. The UK won't tell us everything they said and did with Pembina because, quote, the release of specific material on particularly sensitive subjects could have a negative impact on our current and future relations with Canada. That's what the UK said. It's so nasty what they did with Pembina, it could create a diplomatic incident, so they won't tell us what they and Pembina got up to. My friends, building the Northern Gateway Pipeline from the BC coast to the BC coast is as strategically important for our country as building the Canadian Pacific Railway was to the BC coast 130 years ago. Back then, as now, foreign interests didn't want that to happen. Americans who wanted to gobble up BC. Now it's billionaire foreign foundations and slippery foreign embassies. But it's just as offensive and just as damaging. Canada has to make a decision. Are we our own masters? Are we a grown-up country of our own? Do we value our own national sovereignty? Or are we a plaything for some foreign embassy, the British or the Saudis or U.S. billionaire foundations? This Northern Gateway Pipeline, like the Keystone XL pipeline, is not actually about oil. It's about whether or not we are a serious country. A country that makes decisions in our own national interests, not letting anyone with an internet connection to delay our national discussions by years. It's about whether or not we follow the rule of law or the illegal tactics of radical environmentalists. And at the end of the day, it's about who runs Canada, Canadians or foreigners interfering. I want these pipelines to proceed because I want Canada to be strong and rich and to displace conflict oil from OPEC thugs. But if my fellow Canadians disagree, I suppose that's fine. That's democracy. But that's not what's happening now. What's happening now is foreign interference in our country. And that's something that every Canadian, pro-oil sands or anti-oil sands, must agree on. The oil sands are a Canadian decision, and foreign lobbyists should shut the hell up.